You're about to make a trade. Which you do you listen to? Is it get optioning those options? Or let's do a little research. Learn more at finra.org/trade-smart.
The Menendez case. Zero shot these guys were ever even going to be thought of getting out of prison, right? They're going to spend their life behind bars. And now
the judge resentenced them to 50 years with the possibility of parole. So now they come before the parole board in just a couple months.
Oh my God, is this real?
You never would have thought this was going to happen.
Back in the day, it's like, it didn't matter. You kill your parents, especially in that type of grisly way, lock you up, throw away the key. Now it's like, they had it coming to them.
Crazy part about it would be if they were granted parole, I would imagine they'll be on the talk show circuit, granting interviews, trying to figure out ways to monetize.
Book something, a movie, obviously, right? Maybe they'll come on the Determined Society. That'd be kind of crazy, huh? So, Steven, you're out there in the world of California, criminal law attorney. Everything is allegedly, right? Out there defending people. What's going on in your world right now? There's a lot going on out there, but specifically for you, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, with the change in administrations. What my practice focuses more on kind of white collar civil and criminal defense. So a lot of like securities fraud, money laundering, tax issues, civil litigation involving fraud, and with somewhat the changes in priorities by agencies that lead those sort of practices, the DOJ, the SEC. So we're seeing a little bit of a kind of change in focus from what they used to be interested in was kind of like corporate fraud, FCPA, kind of bribery, things like that. And the focus is kind of leading away from that towards maybe more middle market kind of routine kind of fraud, Ponzi schemes, your more standard securities fraud, things like that. So the shifts in priorities kind of affect everybody in the market. For me, it's been pretty good, but I can see some people are kind of having difficulty adjusting it.
It's interesting because with your type of white collar crime, it's almost like you can go to work one day and make a couple bad decisions, right? And it can land you in serious trouble and in prison, right? What about those things? I can look back and I don't have a lot of knowledge on it, right? But I look back at like the whole GameStop thing, right? Is that something that you're kind of talking about?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, I've seen it from both sides. I was a federal prosecutor for the last 7 years. I've been on the defense side, and what I often see is people who go into an activity or a fundraise or a business or an operation well-meaning with good intentions. And then an event, like you said, an event occurs, a loss of some sort or some change in direction of the business that wasn't anticipated, and they try to fix it. And maybe trying to fix it without telling everybody how they're fixing it or what happened. And people can start digging a hole that, once you start digging, it can be difficult to stop without kind of blowing things up. And that's in my mind, how a lot of people run into problems. It's, trying to fix things on their own without getting proper help, without disclosing what's happening. And it can have really catastrophic consequences for even well-meaning people.
Is there a recent example that you can dive into that's public that you're allowed to talk about that specifically speaks to something like that? Someone's trying to fix something, maybe doesn't tell them, and then this whole fire starts that they can't stop.
Yeah, it can even come from an experience from a case I worked on, the Theranos situation, the Elizabeth Holmes blood testing company. Well-meaning, well-intentioned. She was very public in her ambition and what she was trying to build. And my client, Sunny Balwani, was right there with her, helping her to build the business. But arguably, one could.
Rinse takes your laundry and hand delivers it to your door, expertly cleaned and folded. So you could take the time once spent folding and sorting and waiting to finally pursue a whole new version of you. Like Tea Time You. Or this Tea Time You. Or even this Tea Time You.
Said you hear about Dave?
Or even Tea Time You.
So update on Dave.
It's up to you. We'll take the laundry. Rinse. It's time to be great.
Suggests that there were some decisions made with respect to dealing with regulators, not misleading the regulators, but maybe taking aggressive positions with regulators that may have triggered those regulations. And I'm talking about the US in particular and the FDA, triggered them into taking more aggressive positions that kind of started this push-pull that ultimately led to investigations, employee whistleblowing, the SEC, DOJ, and it all kind of spiraled down into what wound up being massive criminal trials and, unfortunately for them, convictions.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I live in a world where you look at streaming services, right? And the thing that is very impactful that I see lately, I think we mentioned it yesterday when we were talking on the phone. It's just so crazy how Hollywood now is impacting real life, right? And so when you have something like, that the Theranos trial, that was just something that happened, and then it turned into a mini series, and then it's a largely publicized thing, right? To me, it's just interesting how the streaming services and Hollywood is actually impacting public perception of things that are, not necessarily private, but may not have heard of it if there wasn't a miniseries made on it.
Oh, and it can have real consequences for the parties trying to litigate the matter or even the trial. For example, you mentioned the miniseries. Our trial for Mr. Balwani started in March of 2022, the exact same week that Hulu released the miniseries. And so there were advertisements everywhere in the Bay Area. Every sign had the Hulu show on it. And on the day the trial started, when the jury is coming in to start jury selection, they drove one of those.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
Those advertising trucks that carry the big signs behind them.
Yeah.
One of those big trucks parked right in front of the federal court in San Jose. And, obviously the parties alerted the judge to this because the jurors are coming in and they're seeing that. And he actually went outside and told them to leave, which I'm not even sure is constitutional. He had the authority to do. He did it. They listened and they moved on. So, yeah, that was a real concern of ours because people are watching that series while the trial's going on. It could obviously influence their views. So that was a constant push-pull we were dealing with.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another one comes to mind is, we discussed yesterday, I grew up in the Bay Area, right? And I remember, the whole Menendez case. And there was zero shot these guys were ever even going to be thought of getting out of prison, right? They're going to spend their life behind bars. And, what was it? Last year, Netflix came out with the little mini series, and now they're literally going up for resentencing, right? I think that happens in August, right? So they were already resentenced. So they were given life without possibility of parole originally. Then in May, after all of those filings and motions and hearings, the judge resentenced them to 50 years with the possibility of parole. And once you serve a certain amount of time, you become eligible. So they're now eligible for parole. So now they come before the parole board in August.
When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, your choices matter. You're the expert because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
Just a couple months.
That's right. And the parole board, they really don't like to let people out, man. You know, they that could be, but they at least have a shot now. And it's just crazy. It's like, you're looking at this like, oh my God, is this real? You know?
Yeah. You never would have thought this was going to happen if you were talking about this case 3 or 4 years ago, when the prior DA in LA, who was kind of a reformist, kind of started this whole process. And the district attorney filed the motion to request resentencing. And then that DA lost this past November, lost the election. And the new DA came in and said, no, we're not going to do that. And he tried to withdraw the motion and the whole process. And the judge ultimately gave the brothers their hearings and, granted them the opportunity to get parole. Now, whether it happens, the parole board is tough. If you go to the parole board's website and look at the calendar, it's just hundreds of people, like on a weekly basis, like through August. It's just it's an impossible task for them to give everybody a real close, careful look. But because the brothers are so famous and because this case is so unique, unlike all the rest of those people who are on that parole board list, I mean, I think they have a real shot.
You do think they have a real shot, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's because the amount of time they served, and in these situations, because they committed the offenses before they were 26 years of age, and after they were convicted, the law in California changed so that if you commit certain heinous offenses, but you're considered a youthful offender under 26, the court is supposed to take into consideration your age, development, other issues that may have motivated or contribute to the crime. And when that's the case, it gives you a slightly better angle in getting parole, because you're, to the extent you've engaged in rehabilitation programs, things like that, those will maybe carry a little more weight than if someone was already a fully, at least in the state of California's view, fully formed adult, not a youthful offender. So
it's just wild to me, man, because like I'm looking at this and look, man, regardless of allegedly why they did it, because they never denied the fact that they did it. It was the reasoning they did it, right? And now, because of the hit miniseries, it gave everybody the opportunity to be like, hey, let's look at this thing again, and caused mayhem, and it impacted the judicial system. Dude, that's powerful, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think so many things have played into it. The media's impact on the case, the kind of societal changes since these things happened. The abuse issues were an issue in the original trial. And the original trial, the first trial, the trial judge wouldn't let that defense come in. He kept it all out. It was only in the retrial where some of it came in, but not really the full extent that we're now aware of. And, given what happened in the church with the Catholic Church abuse issues and all, I think society has just changed its views about whether young men can be, victims of that kind of abuse. I think back then, the district attorney, the trial attorney, actually told the jury, argued to the jury, young men like them can't be abused in that way, which is absurd.
Right.
I mean,
they absolutely can.
Yeah, no, times have changed.
But you're right, though. Societal changes, right? And how people perceive these types of crimes and how the public views is acceptable or not, right? So back in the day, it's like, it didn't matter. You kill your parents, especially in that type of grisly way, like lock you up, throw away the key. Now it's like they had it coming to them, right? And I don't truly believe that, but some people do. Yeah. I mean, you get on there and you see on social media, some people like, hey, like these kids did their time, their parents, did this to them. They should get out of jail now. And it's just like, I'm looking around, I'm going, wow. And I'm wondering what your opinion is. Let's say they go before the parole board and they do get out. 2-part question. If that process does happen, what's the process on the release? And then also, what type of public backlash or celebration do you foresee happening?
it's interesting. So if the parole board were to get to that position and actually grant parole, and that would be after the brothers submit all of their kind of supporting information, the DA's office would submit all of theirs, victim impact statements could be considered. There's like a risk report done of the brothers with respect to whether they were violating rules in custody, things like that. All of that goes into the decision making. And if the board then says, yes, we're going to grant because the evidence suggests that, they do not present an unreasonable risk to society, the governor can still overrule them and say no.
Okay.
So not a free pass. The board can grant and the governor can take it away. Now, whether he would do that, who knows? But, there are a lot of moving parts to this whole decision making. And then, even then, a judge can impose conditions on the parole. Now, what those conditions would be, it can depend. They would have theoretically a parole officer. There might be work requirements. You have their check-in requirements, like financial disclosure requirements. Sometimes there could be, you have to do charitable work, things like that. Even home confinement can be a term, although it would be probably unusual. And the really crazy thing here is I think, all view the brothers together as a single unit. Theoretically, one of them could get parole and the other could not, depending on some of the different factors. So they're not necessarily subject to the same outcome because, again, they're each individual and they're going to be assessed individually.
So you're talking about Gavin Newsom. Is it typical that a governor would overrule or remove the parole decision if they were granted? Is that normal?
It's happened.
Really?
I think there, in my recollection, one or two of the female Manson family clan. I think one of them was granted parole by the board, and I think the governor overruled it, if I'm recalling correctly. So it happens, particularly when you're talking about high-profile crimes, the Menendez brothers, the Manson family, things like that are so grisly. It's not out of kind of character for politicians to want to look tough on crime. So they don't let them out.
Yeah. Okay. So the second part of the question was like, let's say that they do get granted the parole. Newsom doesn't, withdraw it and they do get out. They can get out immediately, right? Like it would be an immediate type situation.
Yes. Yeah. It could be quick.
Can you imagine a world? Like, I mean, honestly, it's crazy to me because as we mentioned, I grew up in that area. I remember it happening. It was 89?
Yeah. It was when it happened, it was the dawn of court TV also. So that was really the beginning. That was really the beginning of this focus on the legal system and cameras in courtrooms, at least in state court. Yeah. This was really the starting point of kind of all of that, all the way through the 90s and later the OJ trial. And this was really, really the beginning. But the crazy part about it would be if they were granted parole, kind of the media frenzy. I mean, if you imagine what it's going to be, I would imagine they'll be on the talk show circuit, on granting interviews, trying to figure out ways to monetize the notoriety while
a book, something, a movie, obviously, right? Maybe even the Determined Society. Maybe they'll come on the Determined Society. That'd be kind of crazy, huh?
Maybe. I think it would be a good move for them if they do get out. It's go ahead.
No, I mean, I agree. It'd be kind of crazy. I was just thinking about like all these different things, like, to your point of the media frenzy. I mean, it's going to be massive. I think it's going to be massive either way, whatever decision they make, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. One gets out, both gets out. None of them get out. I think there's going to be a side that people are going to play, and it could potentially cause an uproar out there, right? Do you see anything potentially happening if they do get out? Like, what do you see that frenzy being locally?
It's always present, like throughout this whole resentencing process. It's been pretty top of mind for most of the community. Local news even have been on top of it pretty much step by step, actually in the courtroom for every hearing and reporting it out. So it's still a headline that people follow. I just think for the brothers, though, this is really a huge moment, because in the parole system, if you don't get it the first time, the board can then make a decision. Well, can you retry in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 15 years? And given the age of where the brothers are at, if they don't get it now, the clock is running. I mean, you don't come back for several years, which is really tough.
They're in their 50s, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Because I'm 46, and I know they're older than me.
Yeah, they're older than myself as well. I think they're in their late 50s, if I recall correctly.
That seems mid to late 50s. That seems about right. Yeah. That'd be crazy. And just I'm trying to think of all the other things too, because they're sitting there obviously, of course they want to get out, but what do they do? Who's going to hire them? Right? I just, all these things, man, I'm just I'm not saying it to be funny though. I know it's a chuckle. We're both laughing about it, but it's damn, really think about that. What kind of quality of life are they going to have if in fact they do get out? They're going to have nobody.
They do have, interestingly, they do have family members, cousins, aunts who have mostly been supportive. And it sounds like they would be supportive of them going forward, because getting back to the whole parole plan and the presentation by the brothers, they actually have to present a release plan and a plans they have and efforts they're going to make to basically rehabilitate, follow the rules, and not recidivate, not commit crimes again. Yeah. So basically, they would have already presented to the board how they're going to be supported by friends, family, potential employers or business opportunities, things like that. That's all part of the decision making, because if their family life and support were a blank slate, they had none, pretty highly unlikely they'd get out, because what else could you do but commit a crime to support yourself?
Yeah. But to your point, though, I think there's going to be a massive opportunity for them. There's going to be a book publisher that's ready for a massive 6-figure advance, right? There's going to be a lot of different opportunities for them that are going to present it right away. I just think it's crazy. It's nuts to me. It's all very interesting, but there's a lot of interesting things going out there in California right now. Hell, you were telling me yesterday, what happened in the park? What was going on? There was a parade. What happened?
Yeah. With the uptick in immigration enforcement with ICE presence in Los Angeles over the last month, which, I think most people, to the extent they were arresting, felons and people here unlawfully who are committing crimes, I think most people kind of support that.
Sure.
But, chasing day laborers through the parking lot at Home Depot has been a little surprising to some. And then what happened just yesterday at MacArthur Park, large park near downtown, pretty well known. There was essentially a kind of brigade of law enforcement. Most believe they're ICE or CBP, Customs and Border Protection, fully masked, fully camoed, rifles, trucks, some on horseback, basically marching through the park. And the only thing or people that were in the park, there was a summer day camp for kids, and they were in the park, and they suddenly this whole parade of armed officers comes through, and the kids had to be shuffled away, and so they weren't involved, but they didn't arrest anybody. They just kind of marched up and down the park, I guess presumably to make known their presence in the community. I think DHS released a statement that they did it to deter the market for fake IDs and social security numbers in the park. I mean, theoretically, I guess, but you need and camo to do that. Not really sure.
It's just interesting. It's almost like, because I can tell you what it looked like from afar. You know what I mean? We're out here in Florida, and we went out there to do some interviews. And I think the day or two before, I talked to Val and talked to my team. I'm like, guys, I don't know how close we're supposed to be to these protests, these riots, whatnot. I see, armed guards in the middle of, the interstate or the highway. I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on out there, right? And we got there and we didn't really see anything, but come to find out, one of the studios we rented was literally 2.5 miles away from the actual epicenter of this. And when I asked the gentleman how far away it was, he's like, "Oh, you're about 25 miles away." I was like, "Dang, man."
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, all the action was within like a half square mile downtown where the federal buildings are, essentially, and pretty isolated to just that. So if you just focus the cameras on that area, it looked intense. Yeah. There's a lot going on. But if you bring the camera out, the larger picture, it's like a little street corner or two where the activity was.
Yeah, it's a little pie. I saw that one reporter get hit with a rubber bullet. Did you see that?
I know, and those hurt. They do real damage.
I bet.
That's that's a pain point, definitely. I don't know if you remember doing the paintball.
Yeah.
Back in the day, if you ever did paintball, like the way those paint pellets feel, apparently this is like 10 times those paintballs. So,
you want to hear a crazy story about paintball? We'll give the audience a break here and get them laugh a little bit. So my son's last birthday, he wanted to do paintball. And, this was in October. I'm like, all right, my wife and I are like, all right, cool, let's go do it. So invites all his friends. And, I had one of my buddies and his wife come out, and the day was going great until my friend screwed the whole day up for everybody. It was towards the end. And buddy, AJ, this is your fault. Goes up and sees my son, and he's like 5 feet from him and just unloads on my kid.
Oh, no.
And no, it's Steven, like, his leg was bleeding everywhere. I'm like, oh yeah, what the shit? What the hell was that? It's this kid's birthday, man. Like beat him, win, like shoot him once, but like also we told my son, like, dude, don't wear shorts. Like, don't. Yeah. It's hot. I'm gonna wear shorts. I'm like, okay, and dude. So if it's 10 times worse than that shit hurts, man. No thanks.
Oh yeah,
no thanks.
Definitely.
What else is going on in your world, man? There's got to be some. I think you sent over some other points. Someone with Sunny Balwani too, and there's just a lot of interesting things going on.
I mean, other than obviously everyone's talking about the Diddy case and how that all worked out and shook out, and what are the moving factors. I think some people are still trying to process that because, I mean, it's emotional because people recognize, I think, the extent of the abuse and have difficulty processing, like, but how is it he got off on both of the serious charges? I think a lot of people are still kind of grappling with that, definitely.
I'm one of them, and I can talk about it. Like, look, I mean, I don't have a dog in the fight other than the fact that what's right is what's right, right? Like, I see the abuse on film, with Cassie, like you see it in the hotel room. You see all of these different things, like the sex workers crossing state lines. Well, isn't that trafficking? Like, I don't understand. And typically when the state of New York charges you with something that big, it sticks. Like that they have those I's dotted and those T's crossed. And so I think the big surprise to the public was, he was convicted out of the 5 major counts. He was only convicted of 2. And then it's like, what's going on? Is he getting out on bail? And, so obviously there's a lot of people that are like, man, this is kind of effed up, because if this joker gets out, like, what the hell, man? Like, is it because of money? Is it because of, the name? And again, if he's not guilty, then obviously he shouldn't be there. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not saying that just because, public perception says you're guilty, that you're guilty. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want to be ignorant in the fact, but when I saw that, I'm like, what the fuck? What, like, seriously? Like,
yeah,
it blew me away.
It's a real issue, and it somewhat, I think, ties into who prosecuted the case, because he was charged by the feds. He wasn't charged by the New York DA's office. And, so for federal jurisdiction, like you said, you got to cross state lines, or, for the RICO charge, racketeer organization, again, involving interstate commerce, you need to trigger federal jurisdiction. But some of the things you just described, his literal assault and dragging Cassie through the hotel lobby, that doesn't cross state lines. That's domestic abuse. That's assault.
Yeah.
And he could have been charged with that by the locals.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened, I don't think. That would be the most obvious charge. But instead, for the federal jurisdiction, they had to put together a more complicated, RICO case, trafficking case, and then the Mann Act, which is what he was actually convicted of, which is simply transporting, persons across state lines for prostitution, which is literally like an early 20th century statute that was designed to prevent kind of some concerns back then about white slavery and trafficking in women in the early 1900s. So it's still an odd duck to a federal charge.
That is odd. So with that charge there, being convicted of that, what can that potentially come with? Because I know he's convicted of two things, right? What potentially is he looking at in your mind?
Yeah, it's 2 counts of 18 USC 2421. The stat max is 5 years each. Is it 5 years? Or it might be 10 years each. But no one gets the stat max. Basically, you're sentenced under the sentencing guidelines. And for that basically offense, the guideline template starts at 14 points, which isn't significantly high. And then you add on additional points for other elements of the offense conduct. But I think the defense just submitted a letter, I think, asking for like 2.5 years or something like that. 2.5 years. I think the government was asking for twice that. So,
2.5 years for each one, or total?
Total. Yeah.
How long has he been in?
I think it's got to be about a year now. No,
I feel like it's been a I feel like if it's not a year, it's like definitely 8 months, right? I feel like it's been quite some time. I just, because I know he was denied bail, right? He was denied bail. Yeah. So, obviously for, the judge felt it appropriate to keep him there. But I mean, what are your thoughts? Like, if they asked for 2.5 years, I mean, he would only have like a year and a half left.
Yeah. He gets credit for the time. In the federal system, you typically do about 85% of the time, as long as you get your good time credit. So, maybe he would have a year left, a year and a half. If the judge goes with the defense calculation and argument, the problem is the judge has been exposed to all this other conduct, really heinous conduct, even though he's acquitted of it. Under the guidelines, some of that acquitted conduct can still be taken into consideration under the guidelines, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But it is counterintuitive. So, I suspect the defense argument is a little aggressive, and given what the judge has seen of his character, I got to think he's going to go more towards the higher end of the guideline calculations. That would just be my view.
Yeah. I mean, so technically, in your opinion, based on that, he could serve another 4 to 5 years.
I suspect so.
Yeah.
To me, that would not just take into account the actual offenses of conviction, but part of the sentencing calculus is the person. The person, their character, their history and characteristics are what the what the guidelines are supposed to take into consideration. And the officer who writes the report, though, they interview the person, they go to their family background, they interview family members. So it's somewhat of a, at least theoretically, a holistic look at the person. And then you look at this person. I mean, obviously he did great in the business world, very successful, very talented, but obviously there's some other, I'll call them character flaws that led him to where he's at. And, a judge can't ignore those character flaws.
It's interesting because, my wife was really kind of upset at the verdict. And I just looked at her, I go, this is really unfortunate. It kind of, pisses me off too. But she goes, he's getting out. I go, nah. I was like, he's gonna serve some time, and she's like, well, maybe time served. I'm like, no. It's not gonna be time served. He's not getting out anytime soon, in my opinion. And I could be wrong. And, look, man, I mean, like I said, there's just so many different types of character flaws that this man possesses for a judge to be like, all right, man, you get to go home in 5 months. Like the domestic charge, in my opinion, the assault, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that hasn't even been a charge.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. Typically, a lot of the conduct he's been engaged in is charged by locals, and in particularly in Los Angeles, like here now we have a new DA who's tough on crime. So and in New York, I would think they would have been interested as well, to the extent some of the events took place in Vegas. Some of that would still be in statute, but when you get into all of these problems of, are they overcharging, is it double jeopardy? Although technically the state and the feds can both charge you for the same offense, and it's not double jeopardy. So
it's interesting. What's the what is the date on when do we know what's happening with him?
I think it's the 20. It's October. I think it's the first week of October.
That sounds about right. I thought it was in the fourth quarter for sure.
Yeah, it's October. I think it's the first or second week of October. So there's some time, and there will be some wrangling about that. But man, I mean it's going to happen.
That's crazy. I mean, just imagine like being one of those individuals, like even the Menendez brothers. You get the resentencing, and then you're just kind of chilling, just waiting, just like all that anxiety or that energy, you know what I mean? And really on both ends too, the prosecution, the defense, and even the public eye, his family, the victims' families, like the victims, like there's so much to go. There's so much going on here, man.
I mean, for him, this is an almost total victory.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if he was convicted on the other offenses, he would have never stepped out of jail for the rest of his life. So, him doing 3 months, 6 months, another year and a half is a piece of cake. I mean, but what are the reports that when he returned back to custody, he got like a standing ovation from the fellow inmates over the result?
Wow.
Which, obviously terrible conduct by him. But, people have their views about, what's right and wrong and what should and should not be charged. And, it seems like the 12 jurors kind of agreed with those inmates on most of the counts.
Well, it sounds like he's well received in prison too. So he's obviously safe,
Particularly now that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. He will be getting out, returning to his business. I'm assuming, although lots of civil litigation he's still got to confront, which isn't cheap, but he's also of an age where, he's a talented guy. I mean, what's really crazy, could he rehabilitate his image and make a comeback of some sort? Will people be willing to work with him? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is, because in the end, what talks?
Money, for sure.
Money talk.
For sure.
And so I got to think, once he's out and he's doing the rehabilitation circuit himself, there are business opportunities for anyone in his circle again.
I'm sure he's going to have a phenomenal stable of PR to help him rehabilitate or at least attempt to. I have my opinions. You may have yours. Like, do you think there's any potential for him to rehabilitate his image and be a productive business person in the industry again?
I tend to at least try to see the best in people.
Right.
Even when they've done terrible things, I always feel like, how did they get to be that person? Like for the Menendez brothers, who created those monsters?
Mm-hmm.
And like what caused it? Typically people, there are some people who are just completely antisocial, psychotics, and they had, great upbringing, great family, and they're just nuts. But for a lot of other people who do bad things, maybe in their background, there have been some terrible things that they experienced that brought them to that point. I'm sure if something happened to him in his youth, we're probably going to hear about it when he comes out. But, I would hope that there's some window for him to fix at least some. He can't fix everything.
No.
He did the harm he did to the people he hurt. But you would think there's some space for rehabilitation.
I tell you, man, it's made it really hard for me to listen to one of his songs. I'm gonna tell you, there's some jams. It's a real thing. Like I say it in humor, but I don't know how many times Diddy songs come on, even with Biggie or what. I'm like, oh, this is a jam. And my wife looks at me, she goes, "Turn that shit." I'm like, but it's back to Cali. It's back to Cali. Like, what do you mean, turn it?
Yeah.
So but
there's the whole R. Kelly audience still listening to his great music.
Yeah, good old R. Kelly, man. Jeez, man, that's another one. Woo, that's a whole nother episode. Good God.
Oh yeah.
And there's a cohort of people that run to his defense.
Oh yeah,
and
not surprising. It's the attraction of talent, and fame and money too.
Sure.
But there's something compelling about someone who can move people, whether it's through music or art or something else. That's attractive.
Because when you move out of music or art, that's emotion, right? And when you play on that emotion, you can move people in and out of that energy. They latch on, and then you don't see things for what they truly are.
No, I totally agree, and that's some of what went on in the Diddy trial as well. Is, both sides trying to play on the jurors' emotions, the prosecution trying to put the heinous conduct in the eyes of the juror over and over and over, and the defense making the point that these victims stuck around for a reason.
Yeah.
The government said coercion. The defense said no, it's money and fame and love. All of those are emotions, and trying to paint the picture who's the hero and who's the villain in the trial. That's what almost all trials are about. Who's the hero? Who's the villain? And Mark Agnifilo, Diddy's lawyer, convinced the jurors that for the most part, the villain was the prosecution, that they overcharged the case.
So interesting. And it'll be even more interesting to see how it plays out. But look, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on today and giving me and the audience your brain. Truly insightful. And I just thought it was very interesting because, my approach in this conversation was just out of curiosity, right? Just asking the questions that I'm thinking about as I'm scrolling through my news feed. And I'm hoping that the audience is latching on or has latched on to things that you're saying and, potentially bring some things to light. And, it just, but the ultimate thing too, Stephen, is, there is a big play on how Hollywood impacts real life now. Whether it's white collar crime or criminal law, like an aggressive, murder or something like that, or abuse. The one thing that I want the audience to truly realize is that no matter what their opinion is, there's still human lives involved. And we have to be open to if someone is proven innocent, right, or rehabilitates themselves, it is not our job to continue with the outrage. It's to, I guess, trust the system that we're in. And I know that's hard.
It can be hard because, we all have our own biases, subjective views. And hey, even myself, it can be hard to kind of see the other side or, really understand how it is that a jury could acquit someone who's been accused of such terrible behavior. But hey, it's those jurors who sat through the months of trial and evidence. And, you can convince one or two, but when they come together unanimously, in my experience, they usually have it right.
One more that kind of comes to mind, man. I'm sorry. It's old school. It's old and it's not even in the news cycle anymore. But the Casey Anthony trial, like, oh, yeah. I mean, that shit was wild, dude. That was wild. And I never thought in a million years she'd be acquitted of that. Right. But again, public opinion versus the juror sitting there, and I'm not saying I want everybody to understand. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying she was innocent. I'm saying they found her innocent. That was their decision. They were the ones sitting on the jury.
Not guilty.
Not guilty. Yes.
Well, which is different even.
I guess it is different. I guess. Yeah, you're right. So, but just, we weren't one of the jurors. We don't know what it was like. We didn't sit there. So, but I just want to be clear to the audience. That one blew my mind. That one really blew my mind. Yeah. And I didn't like the verdict on that, obviously. But anyway, man, thank you so much. I enjoyed chatting with you and, really looking forward to continue to follow your career and everything that you have going on. And I'll be cheering for you, brother, for sure.
Hey, thanks a lot. I had a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Would love to do it again. And
absolutely.
Hope all goes well.
Oh, yeah. Brother, open invite, man. Open invite. I'm sure you'll have something else come up really, really soon. We can wrap again. And obviously I'll be coming out to California. So even if it's just for a coffee or something, let's try to link up here soon. And I just appreciate you, man.
Great. Would love that. Thanks a bunch.
All right. For the audience, thank you for listening, watching. Please send this to somebody that you feel will get some value out of it. Even if you just want to say, hey, can you believe what Sean just said? Send it out there and would love to hear your opinions on it. And thank you again for listening. Until next time, stay determined.
Next up is a little song from CarMax about selling a car your way.
You want to sell those wheels, you want to get a CarMax instant offer.
So fast.
Want to take a sec to think about it.
Or like a month.
Want to keep tabs on that instant offer.
With Offer Watch.
Want to have CarMax pick it up from your driveway. Get it done today. You want to
So, want to drive? CarMax. Pickup not available everywhere. Restrictions and fee may apply.